Welcome my fellow endoskeletons to part 2 in my series of tutorials to help you learn about the Starship Creator in Starbase. I'm Kenetor, and in today's video we'll be going over the use of beams that make the backbone of every ship in the game. And if you missed part 1 in the tutorial series, I'll have a link in the top right and the description. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone this is closed alpha and literally everything is subject to change. What works today may not work next week, so please keep that in mind. The primary goal of beams is to carry the various forces applied to the ship. This could be from the thrusters, tractor beams, cargo lock beams, or cargo lock frames. For the most part, this means you'll want to directly bolt your components to the frame if at all possible. Let's take a look at what you have to work with. If you open the beams folder in the asset browser, you'll see there are 4 different folders with different types of beams in. All beam sizes, as with most components in Starbase, have their size listed in their name, with most things being multiples of 24 centimeters. With straight beams, you'll mostly be using the first 5 beams up to 96 centimeters. The longer beams are double the size of the last, and are usually used to either cut down the number of beams when building larger ships, or placed in low stress areas, or are used to help spread out the stress by shortcutting to a different area of the ship, but I haven't needed to use this method yet. Corner beams are simply 3 different variants of 24, 36 and 48 centimeters. Note the difference between the 24 centimeter straight beam and the corner beam here. If you have anything that is connected to 2 different sides at 90 degrees apart, it's best to use the corner. If you are just filling a 24 centimeter gap between 2 inline beams, then use the straight piece. Need to connect multiple beams to a central point? Then you'll need the intersection beams. These come in 36 and 48 centimeter varieties and cover the different variations of 3, 4, 5 and 6 connection points. For both the 3 and 4-way connections we have 2 versions. There are T or cross sections, and then there are corner sections to use as well. Next up we have 4 angle beams to use. I avoid them for the most part in areas that will be plated, or if you want to connect beams to the angle part. This is because at the moment, as I'll show you, the angle part has no snap points. If you do use them however, there are quite a few options for plating, including corner or angle plating that can fit around the outside, and sometimes the inside too. The last piece type you'll use is not in the beam folder, it's in the special folder, and that is the 30-degree beams. We get 2 varieties of these, but they both share one strange feature. One side of the beams is longer than the other, which means how you orientate them really matters. As you can see in this example, it will put the end point of your beam in a different location. If you want to plate these, I would highly recommend trying to use the larger of the 2, as the plate made for the smaller one does not fit properly. It leaves a smaller than 12 centimeter gap that cannot be filled, whereas the larger version fits perfectly. I have seen many people try to use these to make more circular shapes. If you do, I would recommend flipping every other 30-degree beam. This will give you a balanced and symmetrical ring. If you don't, it will still work, but things will line up strangely. As you can see, trying to put a center beam into this will not fit completely and will leave a small gap. This can still work, but you have to be careful when planning out your structure, as you could get more of these gaps. Now to actually build a frame, it's super simple. Just lay out your beams how you want and connect them with attachment plates. You can find these in the attachment folder. They come in 4 varieties, 12 and 24 centimeters, straight pieces and corner pieces. Let's place some on the frame I pulled out the hauler. Firstly, the easiest ones are straight pieces at 24 centimeters. These are the most common to use. All attachment plates snap to the beam center, and you need them to be centered over the white lines at the end of the beam. Once in place, you can just bolt each side to secure the beams. If you are ever unsure where to bolt, you can always hide the attachments on the left to see what is behind. Now here is the corner. A 12 centimeter or 24 centimeter will work fine here. Let's use the 12. Again, these snap to help you out. On this joint behind, we have to join a 4-way intersection with its neighbouring beams. You only need a single connection to each one to make it valid, so you could put 4 straight attachment plates, one on any side of the connection. Something like this would work fine. It would also be okay if you wanted to add in redundant plates and bolt every connection too. This would help if an attachment plate was damaged. Your beams wouldn't be at risk of coming apart. On bigger ships however, you may run into the 8,000 attachment plate limit. If this happens, you should look for joints like this to save on attachment plates. I'll use the opposite side as an example. Here I will bolt all 4 connections with just 2 plates. The trick is in using the 24 centimeter corner attachment plates instead. Here we can cover multiple connections and bolt as shown. This is half the attachment plates needed for this joint. And for the small 12 centimeter straight plates, you will use them in this sort of situation. We have 3 beams that need to be connected to a central point. Here you will go with 2 24cm as normal, but you can't fit a third in, but the small 12cm straight plate fits just fine. Again, you only really need to use this if you are plating all connections, because you could easily just use the other sides of the beams instead. Now for what some people call cursed bolting. You can't always get a clean connection when designing ships, but that's okay because in some cases you can still make a valid connection for your framework. Sometimes you have small gaps like shown, or angled beams. These can be bolted fine, as shown here. Otherwise you can also manually place the attachment plates without snapping. In the editor this is done by either toggling it off with Shift and C, or holding C while moving to temporarily disable snapping. I would try to avoid this for 2 reasons. It may be patched out in the future, or more commonly, it will block plating from being placed on top of your beam. And finally, there is the Autobot tool. This tool will do all of this for you, except for the curse bolting. Just hit 9 on your keyboard, then click your frame. It will take a moment to do its magic and all the plates will pop up and be bolted. The bigger the ship, the longer this will take. If I turn around, you can see it has bolted everything in the scene. Now this may not be ideal for what you are working on, so instead we can do it selectively. Just tick the Apply to Selection button in the Tools options, select which part you want to auto-bolt, and then use the tool. One extra note here is that in the future we will have beam welding. While we don't yet have the details on this, it will most likely remove the need for connection plates for beams that touch via their endpoints. Once we have welding in closed alpha, I'll add this as an extra short tutorial and throw a link in the top right hand description. Although I've used the hauler's frame in this example, this is not how you will be really building your frame. It's best to design this by what you want it to carry, and as such is built in tandem with and around your components. If you only create a shape, you could have hours of work wasted by not leaving enough space for the things you want or need inside and outside of your ship. I would also not bolt or place any connection plates until you have finished the majority of your frame design. This helps reduce objects in your build and speed things up, as well as making things easier to edit your build should you need to change something around. One of the most important components to consider is the thrusters. This is where most of the stress your beams take come from, and the tool to check this stress is the durability tool, number 6 on your keyboard. This tool has 2 modes for checking your ship. The first is your structural integrity, that's left click, and the beam stress is right click. A common problem people have is seeing this, a fully yellow frame and a small message in the center saying no ship frame. A ship is only valid if it has at least 1 thruster. If your ship has a thruster, make sure it is bolted to its base and the frame to count. And specifically for non-maneuvering thrusters, check the alignment is not off by a small amount on the hardpoint. You can see after fixing this problem we finally have a green frame and it shows up Ship Warp Class in the middle along with a number. This name is a legacy name and has nothing to do with warp anything. This is the ship's minimum structural integrity, and where the S is positioned is the centre of mass for the ship. This will be important to know for later when trying to balance thrust, especially on non-symmetrical ship designs. Now if we right click with the durability tool, within the black ship's frame we have coloured lines. This is the route the stress takes around your ship. The higher the stress, the more pink and brighter it gets. Since this ship only has maneuvering thrusters, the stress is pretty low and not an issue. If we were to switch it out for more powerful thrusters, not only do you see the structural integrity is lower, but the beam stress is much higher. But not too high, the beams can't take it. If Ship Warp Class ever drops below 1, that is when a ship will not be able to fly at max speed, because parts will fall off from the stress. So always keep it above 1. And to finish off, I have some examples of mounting hardpoints. Ideally, you want to support your thrusters with a solid framework. And while you only need 2 bolts from a hardpoint to the beams to make it valid, I try to use at least 4 to 4 separate beams to help spread the stress from the thrusters. Most of these are sat on top of the thrusters, but the second example shows you can put them flush with the beams if you want to as well. To bolt these, you can either bolt from the other side of the beam or from inside using these angled tabs. When securing these, it's important to leave some space to the ports of the hardpoint for when you get to the wiring and piping stage of ship design. You also have larger hardpoints you can use for thrusters and other things. These are a lot deeper and can fit a ring of beams around it. These can be used for either looks or to make bolting a box thruster a lot easier, especially if you use these small holes on the rear side corners. Please note thruster's body also needs to be bolted to your beams, so keep that in mind when designing. And that's pretty much it for beams. Just keep beaming away till you get the overall shape you want and can fit your components, and you will have a ship in no time. I hope you found it useful and tune into the next one. I'll be keeping all of the Ship Creator tutorials in their own playlist, but to make sure you never miss out, please do hit the bell after subscribing for notifications on all my videos. And I'll see you in the next one. Kenetor, out.